Okay, so we are studying the book of Hebrews as we have been for a very long time. And we've looked at a bunch of sections, and then we find ourselves into Hebrews chapter 11, the Hall of Faith, which has all of these amazing Bible characters. Uh, and so we're well into it at this point, as you can see. And so today we are looking at Rahab. So let's start see what Hebrews 11 says about Rahab. It says, by faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they were compassed about 7 days. By faith, the harlot Rahab perished not with them that believed not when she had received the spies with peace. And so there's a little significance to what's happening in the picture right there. And we'll look at the story. The writer of Hebrews, one thing is to point out about Hebrews and the way that it's written. This is written with reference to things that happen in this event and in this Old Testament Bible story, but no information about it because the assumption is that everybody knows. And that's the nature of the book of Hebrews. Hebrews, of course, are the the Jewish people, and the expectation is they grew up learning these stories, and they already know all of these stories. So there's no telling of the stories in the book itself, just reference. So we're going to go back and look at the story, although you may know it already. But let's get a little context here. This is a map showing the journey from Egypt to the promised land. And the pinkish area to the top right is basically the promised land that ended up being settled by Israel. And Hebrews 11 is sort of taking us chronologically to reach this point. And where we were last week, we studied the Passover, and we noticed that the people of God were saved by blood, not the shedding of the blood only, but the applying of the blood to their door, to the lintel above the door, and to the side posts on the two sides of the door. And that was kind of a fun study. Then from there, they go to the Red Sea, where they are saved by water. And that phrase I put there, saved by water, that's a Bible phrase that I'm borrowing from the writings of Peter, not as a description of the Red Sea, but it's more obvious in the Red Sea, at least to my mentality. In the Red Sea story, as we know, they came to the shoreline and they're like, okay, we can't really go any farther. We can see here that they could go around, but they don't know their way around here. They haven't been out here. They're just looking at this body of water, and the armies of Egypt are coming up behind them. And of course, we know that the God parted the waters. They walked through, the Bible says, as on dry land. Then the armies of the armies of Egypt rather, pursued in after them, and the water came in on them and destroyed the army of Egypt. So the water literally destroyed the taskmaster. The water literally destroyed the enemy. And so they were saved by water. The place where that phrase saved by water is used is in First Peter chapter 2, where Peter's actually talking about Noah and the ark. And he says there that Noah and his family were saved by water. And that phrase, I just like the phrase because it's a personal experience of mine, that reading the Bible, when I first started to really try to study the Bible, I came to that phrase like, wait, that's not the way I learned it. In Sunday school, I learned that Noah and his family were saved by the ark, and that they were saved from the water, that the water would have killed them and the ark saved them from that. But the Apostle Peter has better insight than I have. He didn't say they were saved by the ark, they were saved from the water. He said they were saved by the water. And so if the water saved them, what did it save them from? Well, it saved them from the sin that was in the world. And then Peter goes on to say in 1 Peter 3:21, the like figure whereunto even baptism does also now save us. And the Bible also tells us that the children of Israel were baptized in the sea. In other words, that this story of the Red Sea is a symbolic story about water baptism and how that we are saved by water. These are twin sister stories, and the Hebrews 11 couples them together. The Passover shows being saved by the application of the shed blood of the lamb. The blood of the lamb applied to the home saved the family. And then a twin sister story to that. The children of Israel were saved by water. And we looked at that the last time, but I wanted to really emphasize that again at the things that are connected to these stories that are being referenced by the book of Hebrews, because we're going to see some connection here with Rahab as well. After this Red Sea, all that other red arrow that we see all over the place in the picture, in the map here, that was 40 years of traveling to get to a location that shouldn't take 40 years to get to. In fact, the bulk of that, if you can see like where the number 6 is, right around the middle of the map, 38 years is just kind of all in this one little area. But that's how God works sometimes. Sometimes we have things that we need to get through, we need to grow through, we need to change and evolve and develop. And God puts us in a place where he's going to do what he's going to do to help us and to get us ready for what's next. Well, also coming into the promised land, the direct route would have been to come up from the south and just enter. There it is right there. But instead, God took them over to the east, and they came up alongside the Salt Sea, alongside the Jordan River. And then they had to actually cross the river to get into the promised land. So let's zoom in here on this part of the map. And the river becomes a boundary they have to get through. And what's pretty awesome, during those 40 years of travel, we have a whole new generation of people that have come up. And literally all of the people who passed through the Red Sea died before this point, except for 2 people, which were Joshua and Caleb. Now we have people who are the people of God. They didn't grow up in Egypt. They didn't pass through the Red Sea. They grew up on the journey, and God gives them their personal water parting experience for the River Jordan. Now, I just pointing it out just because I love it. I find all this really exciting. We're not studying that story of the parting of that water, but I just want you to know that it is a thing that God parted the water of the Jordan River to bring this new generation through and give them the same experience that their forefathers had passing through the Red Sea. But let's zero in just above, if you see just at the top part of the Salt Sea there. Let's zoom in there, and we see on the east side on the right, the location of Shittim, which is where the people of Israel are encamped, where we're going to catch up with their story. And they need to get across the Jordan River, and they need to inhabit the promised land. And they're going to start with this city of Jericho, which we know had these giant walls. So they've got this walled city that they're going to come against. So before they just roll at it, Joshua the son of Nun sent out of Shittim 2 men to spy secretly, saying, go view the land, even Jericho. Like, we're not just going to go running out there not knowing what we're going to encounter. I'm going to send some scouts, tell us what's going on out there. And those two spies went and came into an harlot's house named Rahab and lodged there. I don't know. I kind of picture the harlot's house maybe in an area of town that's kind of away from the legal officials and people that you're, don't want to make sure don't catch you while you're spying out the land. Maybe a seedy area of the city. Now we do know it's at the edge of the city, not the center of the city, because it's part of the wall. Her house is actually part of the wall, as we will see in the story. And she took them in, and they lodged there. And the king of Jericho sent unto Rahab, saying, bring forth the men that are come to thee, which are entered into thine house, for they be come to search out all the country. But she had brought them up to the roof of the house and hid them with the stalks of flax, which she had laid in order upon the roof. So they came to get the spies. They had heard that they were at her house, but she hid them. So we're seeing her loyalty is with the spies of the people of Israel rather than with the authorities of her homeland. Why would that be? Why would she shift her loyalty from her heritage and from her home to these outsiders? Verse 9, she said unto the men, I know that the Lord hath given you the land, and that your terror is fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. Now look at this. The children of Israel spent 40 years traveling. In the process, God gave them various victories and miracles, not just the miracles and victory getting out of Egypt, but also with other encounters that took place between here and there. Not only was God using those 40 years to develop the people of God, he was also using those 40 years to publicize and to get the word out. People heard about these stories. Here in Jericho, the people of Jericho had heard what was done in Egypt and had heard about the other conflicts that they faced and the victories that were given to them in spite of being just a vagabond group. And hearing those stories, people had the opportunity to respond. This is the word of the Lord coming to them. Rahab was one who responded with faith. And that's what Hebrews 11 tells us, that she hid the spies by faith because she believed the word of the Lord that had come to her. She believed that God was able to do the things that she had heard that he had done. She believed that he was going to continue to bless his people, the people of Israel. And her response in faith is to shift her allegiance and her connection away from her past and into the future of the people of God. Verse 12 says, now therefore I pray you, swear unto me by the Lord, since I have showed you kindness, that ye will also show kindness unto my father's house and give me a true token. And the men answered her, our life for yours, if ye utter not this our business. In other words, okay, we will, if you keep this a secret, you don't go tell. And it shall be when the Lord hath given us the land, that we will deal kindly and truly with thee. Then she let them down by a cord through the window, for her house was upon the town wall, and she dwelt upon the wall. And the men said unto her, behold, when we come into the land, thou shalt bind this line of scarlet thread in the window, which thou didst let us down by. And thou shalt bring all thy father's household home unto thee, and it shall be that whosoever shall go out of the doors of thy house into the street, his blood shall be upon his head, and we will be guiltless. And whosoever shall be with thee in the house, his blood shall be on our head, if any hand be upon him. So I just love the pictures here that God is giving us of spiritual things. In the Passover story, we have this red blood painted around the casings of the door of the house to protect all of those that are in the house. There's a destruction coming, but if you're inside the house that's covered with the blood protects you and saves you. Here, same thing. It's not blood, but it's red. And it's not a door, but it's a window. And we've got this scarlet cord or scarlet thread that she has, that she's let them down by. And they're saying, put that back up there. When we come back, let that be on this thing. And that will protect everything inside. You and anybody else that's inside will be covered by that scarlet cord and protected and saved by that scarlet thread. Now, they told her it needs to be there when we come back. And it even reminds me of Jesus saying, be ready, right? You need to be ready when I come for you, when I come back. And that may be in what we call the catching away or the rapture, where the whole church will be taken at once, or it may be your personal catching away when the Lord may come for me or for you at any time that we don't know. But he said, be ready. Now, as long as we get ready by that time, we're going to be okay. But the Lord did caution us, saying, be ready, because you don't know when I'm coming. So get ready right away and stay ready. And Rahab sets us a good example of that, because her response to them was, according unto your words, so be it. And she sent them away, and they departed, and she bound the scarlet line in the window immediately. Now she knows they're not coming back an hour from now. In fact, she gave them the instruction, go hide for 3 days, because she knows her people. She knows how they do things. And she knows if you stay hidden for 3 days, they will give up, and then you'll be safe. And that's exactly what they did. They went and hid for 3 days, then returned to Joshua. So she knows she at least has 3 days before the scarlet line has to be in the window, but she put it there immediately. She's showing us a really good example of how we should respond to Jesus's warning, be ready, for in an hour that ye think not, that's when I'm coming. I'm not going to come when you expect me. I'm going to come when you don't expect me. So have the blood at work in your life. Don't delay it. Don't postpone it. And don't neglect it. When God shows you how to apply the blood of Jesus to your life, respond, get with it, get it done, and then walk with God on a daily basis. Stay ready, because he's coming back. So the two men returned to Joshua and descended from the mountain and passed over and came to Joshua the son of Nun and told him all things that befell them. Now we're going to go past Joshua's chapters 3, 4, and 5 and just stick with where the story relates to our character Rahab. In Joshua chapter 6, beginning part of the way through verse 20, it says, it came to pass when the people heard the sound of the trumpet and the people shouted with a great shout, that the wall of Jericho fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city. Now, I just want to point out that this is even more of a miracle than you may have known. Not only did the walls fall down, they fell down flat. These are walls which are very high, but not only are they high, they're very thick. There are homes in the wall. It's not like a one layer of brick wall. It's not a picket fence, but it fell down, not only down, but down flat. This is a miracle. Nobody tore it down. God tore it down. If people had torn it down, it would have still been an uncrossable barrier. The rubble of the wall would have been a pile too high to cross. So this whole thing is about what God can do that man cannot do. Even if man could bring down the wall by natural means, it still would not do the job. That's why it's so critical that we rely on God. God was able to bring these walls down, and the wall fell down flat. So they went into the city, every man straight before him. In other words, they didn't have to even go around anything. We've got the children of Israel having surrounded and encircled the city, taking a lap around it. And now, when the walls fell down, they've got it surrounded, and just wherever they are around the circumference of this city, they're able to go straight in. There's no obstacle in front. If man does the work, there are still obstacles to deal with. When God does the work, if this is the way he wants it to be, there will be no obstacles. Every man straight before him. And they took the city. But Joshua had said unto the two men that had spied out the country, go into the harlot's house, and bring ye out thence the woman and all that she hath, as ye swear unto her. And we see that line of scarlet thread. Now, here's another miracle. Whatever part of the wall her house was in did not fall down flat, because she and her family would have died in it if it had. But so that survived, and her scarlet thread was there, and Joshua saved Rahab the harlot alive, and her father's household, and all that she had, and she dwelleth in Israel even unto this day. She aligned herself and joined herself to what God was doing and to the future of the people of God. She denied her past. She took this opportunity for a fresh start. Her reputation among her town was irrelevant. She's now a hero, a heroine of the people of God, where she was most likely looked down upon where she came from. But God's view of us, our past is irrelevant. It's our choices that we make when we're confronted with the word of God and with an opportunity from God that determines where we go from here. Let's look at a couple of scriptures here and about the results of this. Matthew chapter, this tells us that she dwells in Israel even unto this day. Matthew chapter 1 gives us a lineage, and we jump to verse 5. It says that Salmon begat Boaz of Rahab. Now, it's spelled differently just because of the language that it's written in, but this is this Rahab. And then her son, Boaz, I'm pronouncing Boaz the way it's written in the Old Testament, Boaz in this language, begat Obed of Ruth. Now, most of this lineage, the wives are not mentioned. Here we're mentioning the wives, the mothers. Rahab is significant from this story we just read. Ruth is significant from the book of Ruth. Rahab was not Jewish. She was a native of Jericho. Ruth was not Jewish. She was an immigrant. And Rahab's son Boaz married Ruth. They had a son named Obed. Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David the king. So not only did Rahab get to be a part of the people of Israel, she was uh, a progenitor of David the king. And then David begat Solomon. And here we have another mention of the mother, her that had been the wife of Urias. In every one of these mentions of the mother, these extra mentions, it's a story, if you know these stories, of problems and God fixing problems. And it's the story of people doing or having done things that they shouldn't have done and God restoring. And in the writing of the lineage here, Matthew saw fit to highlight not the perfect stories, but the stories of restoration, the stories of grace, the stories of mercy. And I take a lot of encouragement in that. I would love to have a spotless record and a perfect personality, but I've got problems. I've had problems, and God's got mercy. And so we skip some verses down to verse 16 here. It says, Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary. Here's another mention of a mother, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. So Rahab, the harlot, was in the lineage of Jesus Christ. Her son, grandson, great grandson, on and on and on and on and on, brings us Jesus Christ. Now, one other note that the Bible makes about Rahab is in the book of James, chapter 2, and verse 25. It says, likewise also was not Rahab the harlot justified by works when she had received the messengers and had sent them out another way. And we're not going to get deep into this book and chapter and this concept and the technical way that the scriptures come together to reveal the full truth. But I'll summarize the concept that we're saved by grace. By grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. But James clarifies that for us and tells us that faith without works is dead. Grace saves us through faith. Faith only lives when it's manifested in works. We don't save ourselves. We are entirely, utterly, hopelessly incapable of saving ourselves. We cannot impress God. We cannot be so good that we should claim or feel to be better than anyone else. We have problems. We have had problems. God can and desires to save us despite our problems and out of our problems. But he does put the ball in our court for us to respond. And if we have faith, if we respond by faith, we do something about it. That's what Rahab did. She did something about the fact that she believed the power of God and the blessings on the future of God's people. She did something about it. That's what faith is. That's what faith does. And even in Noah, who we referred to at the beginning today, the Bible says that Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. That's in Genesis 6. And then First Peter told us that Noah was saved by water. How did Noah, the same water that destroyed everybody else, saved Noah? By grace, right? How did that grace operate in Noah's case? It was not by God reaching down and scooping him up in the palm of his hand and holding him up above the water. That didn't happen. God did not give him that. What did God give him? God gave Noah a plan. God laid out how to build the ark. That's what grace does. Grace, by grace, because of God's grace, because of his love, because of his mercy, he gives us a plan. He gives us a way of escape, 1 Corinthians says. And then it's up to us to respond to it. So let's cultivate our faith. Let's activate our faith. Let's apply our faith. Whatever God has shown you in his word, that you need to do it. And whatever we may have not seen yet, you need to seek after it. Pray, read the Bible, and respond, and throw yourself on the mercy of God. And in every area that you have fallen short, in every area that you have not measured up, throw it on the mercy of God. That's part of the plan. Okay, that's part of the plan. God can and will help us throughout everything that we go through. So there we go. That's the Hall of Faith, showing us through these characters so far. God bless you.